Hi, everyone. Thank you for the birthday wishes and stuff that I haven't even read yet. I'm looking forward to reading it. I wanted to say that and also tell a little story about the few days before my birthday. They were a bit of you know, not an unusual event necessarily, maybe a once in a year event now these days, but in my life, but in people that are in chairs, not so infrequent necessarily. Catheter problems. I have a suprapubic catheter. Many of you, I'm sure, don't know what that is. It's a thin tube, about a 20 millimeter diameter tube that's put into the bladder directly through the skin layer and then through the bladder layer. And I've had it, for 15 years maybe. It just became something that I was required to do at one point, uh, or it was recommended and it's worked since then. I've had, it's high maintenance, but it works. And basically, uh, I had incident where the the bubble, it's inserted in the bladder, and then there's a little bubble that's inflated with water. And if the bubble deflates, or there's not enough water put in it, or if the person putting in it is not trained quite well, and they don't use the correct technique to put the water in, it's quite simple, but there's a little few details. If you miss them, then it can be a pretty big problem. So one for one reason or another, it came out. And um, it was a slow situation, so I didn't know what was hurting, but I knew it was hurting pretty bad, and realized while I was out shopping that it wasn't draining correctly. And then got home and I was really soaking wet. And like I said, these are events that occur. And so I had to get all cleaned up and changed, and the catheter changed. But there was quite a bit of irritation around the area, uh, and I wasn't sure whether at that point I didn't know what had caused it. And that was just you know I was a little concerned that this had happened, and what had caused it to happen. And so I changed it. And then that night it happened again. And the next morning the bed was all wet, and I got had to get cleaned up. I was really concerned at this point, like why this happened um, twice in a row. So my dad went to put a new catheter in the morning, and he had difficulty putting it in. So then at that point, he didn't want to force it. So we became concerned that this was a few days before my birthday, like the third or something. We became concerned, and that it wouldn't go in, or maybe it was on the fourth. And so I this was 8:30 in the morning. I got in the wheelchair and called the ambulance. They got me a taxi, wheelchair taxi. I got in the taxi. I was pretty much undressed, just covered with a blanket. And luckily for me, I guess the it was still draining out of the hole there. But I just had like some briefs covering me, and the chair and whatnot. And um, the real danger, was that the hole would close up, which they do quite rapidly. The bladder heals very quickly, the skin. So if it did close up, then they would probably have to do it uh, make the incision which could, there's all sorts of complications associated with, having to have that done. Just not the least of which are just, you know, timing and scheduling of all the care and being in the hospital and my diet and health and stuff. So I went. The ER helped me. I mean, the technicians helped me get in and get the cab. We went to the hospital. It was pretty busy that day for like a Thursday or something. I can't remember, but it wasn't a weekend, and you know I they they knew what the situation was, so it wasn't like a major problem. But they, in my mind, it was an emergency that needed to be. I know it's recommended it be done within the hour. Replaced. Otherwise, the hole can either the two layers can separate the bladder and the skin. And the two holes can like move apart from each other. In which case, it's pretty much impossible to line them back up again, and then you have to make a new incision or it just closes up so much so that it kind of has to be, which I didn't know. This hasn't happened in years for me. Uh, so I was waiting and just it was a nice day. So I was sitting outside, pretty much just waiting and going inside and waiting for them to call me. And I got there at 8:30, and I ended up being called in at about 11:30 ish. Um, and getting got me in bed. They didn't have a lift suitable for me. I mean a sling. They have ceiling lifts, and they use a sling to lift me into the bed, and they couldn't find a sling suitable for me, and so they suggested why didn't I bring one. The nurse was there, and I said, well, the paramedic had when I started deciding what to bring, he said, oh, you probably don't need to bring that because they have lots of slings, and it probably just get lost amongst their slings. And I was like, okay, yeah, and I did. And the nurse was like, you have to come prepared, best to be prepared. I was like, okay, you're right, because I just ended up waiting an extra hour or two for you guys to look for a sling. But I was grateful, and I was just nervous that they weren't going to be able to get it in. And the doctor was really nice, Dr. Bob, and he knew that I probably had more experience with this stuff than he did, and so he was, listening to what I had to say about what I thought might be the cause and how we would handle it. And so then he got one of the nurses. They were amazing, the nurses as usual, and they came and he deferred to her to put the catheter in because she had more experience, and then he was just there. And luckily for me, oh, first of all, they didn't have the type. He was just going to use a Foley catheter, which is an intermittent catheter, just for not for keeping inside, but since they didn't have anything, and I didn't bring a catheter with me, which was my own stupid fault. I should have brought one of those with me. Duh, expecting that they would have the right size was really unrealistic. And so they ended up finding one which was a size smaller, and the bubble was much bigger than the one I had. So I had 10 cc water inside bubble, and they had a 30 cc with a 19 diameter, which I had a 20. So it was slightly different, but a lot more water. My body's small, my bladder's small. I hope I'm not boring you with details about this stuff, but at this point, you have to be your own doctor. So I'm listening and okay, yeah, just do it. Let's get it over with. I'll go home and then I'll change it, whatever. I went home. Luckily the nurse was able to push it in, not too much effort. The doctor just was like, yeah, it's fine. Just I notified my doctor in case I needed to see a urologist later or something because there was further complications. Anyway, I got home. I was stressed out. I hadn't slept the whole night before because the bed was. Oh no, this. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. I get home, you know, go to bed, like, oh, this is okay, it's gonna work. I'll change it in the morning, but it's working fine. It for maybe because the bubble was the wrong size and the diameter was wrong, it didn't work properly. It maybe about 70% worked, and the bed was soaking the next day. So again, and this time I had my dad put in. I was still nervous about the other one, my regular ones going in, and luckily he had no trouble putting it in, and it went in, and I haven't had an issue. But that was the literally the morning of my birthday, and I was so like exhausted, and then my mom showed up for a visit, kind of because the pandemic ended and she was able to get a ticket, and kind of a bit of a surprise, and it's not. I haven't shared all the details of my upbringing, but that's not altogether like comfortable situation. At least initially, I'm an adjusted adult. I should be handling everything, but I was exhausted, and I hadn't gotten much sleep, and I had been like like full bed changes and a wheelchair change, like laundry, multiple loads of laundry within that week, and just lucky I came through with no skin issues, no health issues. I'm doing fine, but I was like just kind of hard pressed to go on Facebook and start responding to people, and then I was like, shit, I talked to one of my caregivers. What do you think if I made a video and just talked about this stuff? And then she's like, yeah, I think it's a good idea. Like, I'll just make it on YouTube, and then I'll post a link. And today James just called, friend of mine, Quad, and I was like, yeah, what do you think of me making a video and posting it? And he's like, well, uh, take balls. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. And so, yeah, here goes. And thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and respond and read. I hope this didn't ramble on too long, but that's a day in the life, pretty much. Like, it's not that unusual. But lately it's quite unusual. That's a once in a year event, I guess you could say, or a series of events that I just rather not relive for a while. I haven't had a leak in probably a year before that, knock on wood, or infections or any like bladder related issues. I've been doing really well with that, so this was not normal in any way, and um, I'm good. So thank you, and hope you hear more from me soon with other videos about other crazy stuff that might have happened today, or may have happened at some distant past time. Okay, so thank you, and I love you, everybody, and especially my friends that said something or didn't say anything. For I'm not really, I don't ascribe to the notion that you should be obligated to live your life on social media by any means. I mean, everybody's different, and I know I have a strange relationship with social media, especially because of well, anyway, I won't go into it, but yeah, I'm trying to get used to it and get more comfortable with it. I know that it's like a topic for another day, but maybe there'll be something about that. I'm trying to make friends with the medium, and I know that all my real friends are on the other side, so it's like a door that I have to go between. And thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, bye.